everyone, and welcome to this interview. Today, I am joined by Stephanie Weir, Head of Aviation Business Development at London Gatwick Airport. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So today we're going to be discussing all about London Gatwick's long haul plans and how Stephanie personally monopolised on previous experience to strengthen Gatwick's global connectivity. And first, would you mind telling our audience a bit about yourself and what your role and responsibility means for Gatwick Airport?
Sure. So my name is Stephanie Weir. I am the Vice President of Aviation Development at Gatwick. So my responsibility is to lead the team that focuses on capacity. So working with our incumbent airlines to make sure that they are flying the biggest program possible, and also attracting new airlines to fly into Gatwick, and also helping the airlines be successful once they've launched routes or established a program here by working with them on load factors and marketing programs and activities to make sure that, for us, it's really not just about getting in as much capacity as we can. It's about getting in the right type of capacity and then working with the airlines to make sure it's really successful. It's not good for the airport or for the airline for someone to start flying and not have it go well. So we spent a lot of time focusing on the continued relationship with the airlines to make sure that they are flying, really high load factors really successfully.
Right, so a lot of responsibility under your belt then. So I'm quite interested in learning about Gatwick's long-haul plans. So you mentioned that Gatwick now has destinations like Las Vegas, New York, and other destinations in America. So would you mind telling me a bit more about these plans? How did these routes come about? What was the planning process and the negotiation that was required to launch these new roles?
We have very firm vision for the future, and that includes expanding our long haul program. We are very fortunate to be in a catchment area that not only is incredibly large, but also very affluent, that has a high demand for long haul travel. And so we study very carefully the data points to make sure that we're trying to go after carriers that do have a genuine opportunity at Gatwick and can be successful. So once we've understood that data and we know where the demand is, are we underserved in certain regions, or are there regions that just don't have that direct connection that we desperately need, and that there's demand for? We then look at the carriers who can operate that route. There's no sense in going to a carrier who operationally can't fly, whether it be because they don't have the right aircraft or they don't have a base in one of the two points. So making sure we're targeting the right airline, and then really understanding what the airline strategy is so that when we go to talk to them, it's a very bespoke and very personalized presentation where we understand what the airline needs, where they fly, what they do well, what they're focusing on, and making sure they understand how that fits in with the opportunity that is at Gatwick. So we spend a lot of time studying data, and then we spend a lot of time building those relationships with the airlines. A lot of these things that have happened, in the last year since I've been at Gatwick have taken quite a long time. Most of the time, you don't pick up the phone, call an airline, and the next day they're announcing the route. It's it's a continuous conversation. And it's sending lots of information and going to seeing them, and really developing the business case with the airline. And I think that's really important. And it's also getting the airline to understand that we don't stop just at getting them in, and having them to start to fly, but we really think of it as a long-term relationship and how the next steps would work and getting them set up operationally. We think of success as a holistic idea, from start to finish, and the continued growth. We always want to get in an airline, but we also want them to grow, as they are successful at Gatwick. So it's an interesting job, and it's great to be able to talk to so many different airlines across the world and have them all have genuine opportunities to fly into London through Gatwick.
Yeah, it seems like there's like a lot of communication and rapport building in the process of it. So yeah, quite insightful that was.
There is.
So with these new routes, what sort of markets are you hoping to target?
I think we've had a lot of success in the last 6 months. So we had Air India. That was a massive market that was unserved from Gatwick. India is one of the fastest growing populations, and there's a huge diaspora here in London. The fact that we didn't have any direct services. So now Air India coming in with 4 services. to 4 different destinations. We had Chinese carrier come back for the first time since the pandemic. So Air China with 4 weekly to Beijing. That's fantastic. We're hoping to see more of the Chinese carriers come back as well. It's always hardest to get the first one in, and hopefully when they're successful, others will follow. We've had a lot of success in the US. So Delta just launched. They haven't flown to Gatwick for 20 years. The fact that they've come back onto New York is really important for us. Norse Atlantic is launching a very ambitious program from Gatwick this summer to several destinations in the US. So we'll be seeing them launch Washington, D.C., and Boston, San Francisco. Yeah, they're covering a great kind of niche in the market that was left behind by Norwegian long haul, and they're doing a very good job from it. And they've picked London Gatwick as their main base, and we're really looking forward to them, ramping up to their full program. I think we've seen also other carriers from Asia. So we had Bamboo start flights in the last year as well. Saudia is launching from the Middle East, so adding Jeddah to our portfolio of destinations in June. And we see even other carriers that are starting to do kind of longer mid-haul program like Wizz that started Istanbul just a few weeks ago. So it's really a breadth. We're trying to hit all of those places where we see that there's demand and the possibility to fly.
Um, so, off that topic, what sort of results do you forecast happening with these markets? Do you anticipate more revenue being generated, a widening of networks?
Definitely a widening of networks. We're all about diversification. So the more destinations we can have is more choice for our customers. And obviously, the more airlines that we can attract, it's different types of services for different types of clients. Each customer has a different journey and has different needs. And so we try to make sure that we have a huge variety so that we can be that airport and of choice for whatever the customer is. And I think these long haul destinations are definitely more revenue generating, but also more importantly, they respond to the needs of our catchment.
That's quite key, obviously, to really strengthen that passenger experience that you have with your consumers as well. Yeah, absolutely. So what were some of the biggest challenges that Gatwick had faced in their post-pandemic air travel recovery, and how did you work through those sort of issues? And did you employ any strategies that helped, and did you forgo any strategies that didn't?
I think Gatwick had a steep climb. We were severely affected, as many airports were, but severely affected from the pandemic. We had to shut down one of our terminals. Some of our carriers stopped operating for a period of time during the pandemic. So we really had to work hard to make sure that the airport was recovering as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, and within a complex operating structure. The fact that we were able to open up our terminal that had been closed down for a very long time and get it up and running again, and doing the recruitment for that to make sure that we were staffing to the right levels. I think across the industry last year, it was staffing and resource was a challenge. And Gatwick tried to be very proactive with that. We tried to be one of the first out in the market, recognizing that demand would come back. Even if it wasn't there at exactly the moment we went to market to try and recruit, we knew it would come back. And we were right. Demand last summer came back quite quickly. And it, particularly during the peak, very strongly. We needed to be prepared for that. And I think it was a massive effort within the Gatwick ecosystem, because it's not just about the airport. It was making sure that we're working with our airlines and working with our ground handlers and working with our catering companies, everybody that's involved in the passenger journey. Because passengers a lot of times just think about everything being the responsibility of the airport, because that's what they see, right? They're at an airport and they're going through the airport infrastructure, but they don't necessarily realize how many different parties are involved in their journey. And so it's not just enough for the airport to be prepared, everyone had to be prepared. And I think we took a really kind of stakeholder approach and thinking about the entire journey and making sure that everyone was staffed up the best they could, and where there were shortfalls, trying to come up with ways to cover it.
Right, yeah. No, it's notable that I know that many airports in the UK are struggling with staffing crisis, but it is good that Gatwick was sort of the first, as you said, first in the door, and first to sort of identify the problem and solve it really. Yeah. So Stephanie, you yourself, you have quite extensive experience working with airports from across the globe. You've worked to form rapport and maximize commercial interest from these relationships. And quite a notable achievement of yours is what you did at Philadelphia Airport post-pandemic, how you had successfully achieved 9 new flights, 1 new airline, and 36 new destinations flying to and from Philadelphia. So that's very impressive. So how did you do it, and how are you looking to replicate the success in Gatwick?
Thank you. I've been really lucky to work in some incredible places. I really enjoyed my time in Philadelphia. And I think it's all about understanding what each airport is and the region that it sits in and what the opportunities are. And it's always for me, it's always about understanding the data, building the relationships, but also being really hungry and never leaving any stone unturned. It's always about pushing what can the airlines do? What ideas can I put in front of them? How can we make this successful? How can we do things differently to generate revenue? How can we be a better partner? And I think that is a little bit of the approach that I've taken here at Gatwick. I'm incredibly blessed to have a very talented team here at Gatwick. And I think the results show that. And it was just about thinking, what do we want to achieve from Gatwick? How can we make sure that we are pushing a sustainable, fast recovery? And then always keeping our eye not just on recovery, but on the growth. We're always talking as a team. It's not just about recovering to 2019 levels. It's about what happens in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. How do we position Gatwick today for that success in the future? And never letting go of the idea that every day you can make Outlook just a little bit better, and how you leverage those relationships today for success in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of ambitious goals in the future, so all the best with that.
Yes.
And finally, so we were sort of talking before, but you were mentioning like a new brand that London Gatwick was gonna establish. So would you mind just telling me a little bit more about that?
We've just launched a refreshed brand and a new vision. And I think it perfectly encapsulates, who we are as an airport and what we want to be in the next 10 years. We have such firm ambitions. The one thing you've heard me use the word ambitious a couple times in this interview. Gatwick is an ambitious airport, and there's so many opportunities here. And this brand is bold. It's refreshed. It's new. The vision is exactly what we work towards on a daily basis. And I think it's really important, because if you look at an airport that has such strong sustainability goals, we want to be net zero by 2030. We've brought that goal up by 10 years. We're putting huge amounts of investment into that, over 250 million into that. We are about to put in a planning application to bring our second runway into routine use, so that we can be a dual runway operation with all the growth that entails. I think all of those plans needed a bold vision and kind of a bolder, refreshed brand. And this one certainly is. And I think it really does. It positions Gatwick as that airport for everyone, and the investment that we're going to put in to focusing on ease, efficiency, and experience for our customers. It's an incredibly exciting day, because I think it just summarizes everything we've been working on as a team to make sure that Gatwick is really successful in the coming years.
Yeah, well, that sounds tremendous. All the best with that and your ambitious goals for Gatwick's long haul plans as well. I certainly see that they're in more than capable hands for that. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, you've been watching Stephanie Weir, Head of Aviation Business Development at London Gatwick, and Chunekshi of International Airport Review. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.